Hi guys, welcome back. If you're new to my channel, my name is Carmen. Welcome. So do you have difficulty either finding love or keeping love once you have found it? Or you might be having difficulty with a specific person in terms of them giving you the type of love and commitment that you would like to have from them. Well, then it's possible that either you or that person might have an attachment style and not even realize it. So we're going to talk about the 4 attachment styles today in this video. That's right, there are 4 attachment styles when it comes to relationships. And everybody has one of these 4 attachment styles. And you might have one of the attachment styles out of the 4 that might be preventing you and blocking you from finding love. Or somebody that you're dealing with might have this attachment style and you might not even realize it, and this is why you are having difficulty with this person. But let's talk about what an attachment style is first. So basically what it is the way you behave when it comes to relationships. So this can be any kind of relationship, right? But most of the time it's romantic relationships that get affected the most if you happen to have one of these attachment styles that might be either blocking you from finding or keeping love. And I'm going to help you to calculate some of the numbers in your numerological chart to help you to determine exactly if you have one of these attachment styles or not. And we can use numerology to determine this because every attachment style has an energy and a frequency to it, right? And so there are some numbers in numerology that have similar energies and similar frequencies to these attachment styles. And so if you have some of these numbers in key placements within your chart, then you are more likely to have one of these attachment styles. Not all people with these numbers in their chart have one of these attachment styles, but if you do have these numbers in your chart, you are more likely to develop one of these. And I always say that awareness is everything, right? So that's why it's so important for you to learn about this, because once you become aware of this, everything changes. Just having the awareness, often I will see people's lives completely change and they are finally able to either find love or keep love once they have found it. But we're also going to talk about some specific things that you can do that will really help you if it does turn out that you have one of these attachment styles. I'm going to give you specific things that you can do to help you to overcome the energy of these numbers so that you can finally find and keep the love of your life. But first I'm going to show you how to calculate just 2 key numbers within your numerological birth chart. It's very easy. It only takes a few seconds. All you need is your birth date and the first, middle, and last name on your birth certificate. If you already know your numerology numbers, then you can go ahead and skip to the rest of the video. I'll put the timestamp for that right here. To calculate your life path number, you're going to take the month, day, and year of your birth and reduce each one of those to a single digit. So take the month of your birth and add all of the numbers in the month of your birth together until you get a single digit. Then take the day of your birth and add all of those numbers together and keep reducing until you get a single digit. Then take the year of your birth and add all of those numbers together and keep reducing until you get a single digit. Then you're going to take all 3 of those numbers and add them together and keep reducing until you get a single digit. And that's going to be your life path number. If you get an 11, 22, or 33, you do not reduce those numbers, meaning you do not add the 2 numbers together because they are master numbers and you just keep them as they are. We're just going to calculate one more number, and that's your soul urge number. And to calculate your soul urge, you're going to take the first, middle, and last name that was written on your birth certificate at the time of your birth, or whatever name was written on there, because some people don't have middle names. And you're going to take that name and you're going to find all of the corresponding numbers to only the vowels within that name. Okay, only the vowels. And usually I consider Y to be a vowel most of the time. If it sounds like a ya, I usually don't consider it to be a vowel, but most of the time it sounds like a vowel. So then you're going to take all of the numbers that you got for your first name and you're going to add them together and keep adding them together until you get a single digit. Then you're going to take all of the numbers that you got for your middle name and keep adding them together until you get a single digit. Take all of the numbers that you got for your last name and keep adding them together until you get a single digit. Then you're going to take all three of those numbers and you're going to add them together and keep adding them together until you get a single digit. And that's going to be your soul urge number. Now, same thing as before, if you get an 11, 22, or 33, you do not reduce them because they are master numbers, meaning you do not add the two numbers together. You just keep them as they are. Now, if you've changed your name legally because you've gotten married or for some other purpose or whatever, you can always calculate the new name as well, because sometimes there will be a shift in energy. Not always, but sometimes. So with these attachment styles, like I said, they are a pattern of behavior that you typically display when it comes to relationships. And they can develop throughout childhood while you are growing up, or they can develop later on as an adult. So let's talk about the first attachment style, the anxious attachment style. And with this attachment style, basically, these people, okay, according to attachmentproject.com, okay, so if you want more information, you can head on over to that website. According to them, with these people, the thought of living without a partner or living alone causes high levels of anxiety within the person, okay? And people with this anxious type will sometimes have a negative self-image of themselves, but at the same time have a positive view of others, okay? So your image and view of yourself is more negative, but your view of others usually is more positive, okay? And the anxious adult often seeks approval and support and responsiveness from their partner. People with this attachment style value their relationships highly, but they're often anxious and worried that their loved one is not as invested in the relationship as they are. Okay, so there is a strong fear of abandonment that is present within them. This is what they fear the most. They really fear being abandoned. And safety is a priority for these people, basically, according to attachmentproject.com. So basically what happens with these people is they might be in a relationship with someone and that person becomes a little bit distant from them, and because they have a negative self-image of themselves, they start to worry that maybe they did something wrong, right? Maybe this person doesn't care about them as much as they care about them. Or maybe this person doesn't care about them at all, right? So they start to worry about these things once the person becomes a little bit distant, okay? So everything is going fine, but then once that person becomes a little bit distant, then they start to feel a lot of anxiety about it, right? Taking it personally, thinking, oh, maybe I did something wrong. This must be because of me, right? Or they're thinking they must not like me as much as I thought they did. So then what happens is these people will often try to seek the approval or the responsiveness of that person, basically as a remedy for the anxiety, okay? So you might start reaching out to that person and texting them or calling them, trying to get them to communicate with you because, that when they respond to you and they give you their approval, then the anxiety goes away. And so what happens is if the person who has become distant is not giving the anxious person that remedy, right? They're not giving them the responsiveness and the approval that they're looking for, then this can often lead to the anxious person becoming very clingy, right? Or preoccupied with the relationship, constantly thinking about this person, constantly thinking about the relationship, and in need of that person, right? In desperate need of a response from that person, just to know that everything's okay, right? Just give me one text message, right? Or just give me one phone call. And then the anxious person reaches out even more and tries to contact that person even more. They might start texting them multiple times until they finally get that responsiveness or get approval from that person, right? Because that is the remedy for their anxiety that they're feeling within them. And even a lot of times with this anxious attachment style, people with this, they will start liking and valuing that person who is distancing themselves from them even more, right? So what happens is maybe they like them a little bit, but then that person started distancing themselves from them. And then that behavior starts to make you like that person even more and value them even more because they're doing this to you. So when trying to figure out if you have this attachment style, you have to ask yourself, when a person of interest distances themselves from you, do you become anxious, right? Do you start to feel worried? Do you start to feel like you are in need of contact from them? Or do you start desiring them even more as a result of their behavior, right? As a result of them distancing themselves from you? Then you have this anxious attachment style, okay? But we're gonna get more confirmation on this because we're gonna see if you actually have certain numbers in your chart, because that will give more confirmation, right? Because there are certain numbers that tend to have more of a similar energy to this. So we're going to talk about that next, but before that, I want to talk about the other attachment styles first. The second attachment style is the avoidant attachment style, also known as the dismissive. And according to attachmentproject.com, okay, so you can head on over to that website if you want to get more information. And these people often perceive themselves as being like the lone wolves, okay? And they tend to be strong, independent, and very self-sufficient. And that includes emotionally as well. So they are also emotionally strong, independent, and self-sufficient. And they can have high self-esteem or a very positive view of themselves, okay? And they also believe that they don't need to have or to be in a relationship to feel complete, okay? So they are fine being by themselves. And they feel like they don't need to be in a relationship to feel good about themselves or to, be happy in life, basically. They don't want to depend on other people or have other people depend on them. And they don't want to seek the support and the approval that you get from being in a social bond, right? So they're not looking for that support. They're not looking for that approval from another person that you would get from being in a relationship, right? Or being in a social bond. They're not looking for that. They would rather just give it to themselves. And these people often will avoid emotional closeness, right? So they will tend to do whatever it takes to avoid being emotionally close to people. But the thing is with these people is that a lot of times they will seek out physical closeness, okay? So you'll see these people that, they'll want to date you and everything. They'll want to get to know you, but, they could have this attachment style, but really it's the physical closeness aspect that they're looking for. And when it starts to become an emotional thing where you're becoming emotionally close, that's when they leave, right? Because they're not looking for emotional closeness. They only want the physical part, right? The physical closeness. So if you start to avoid people when this starts to happen, or you are dealing with somebody who is avoiding you because of this, then that could be a huge sign that you have this avoidant attachment style, or that person that you are dealing with has this avoidant attachment style. Now, another thing with these people is that when it comes to a very emotionally dense situation, right? If there's like a lot of emotion involved in a situation, they will often hide or suppress their feelings. So you might never show how you truly feel about a situation or a person because you're good at hiding it. Or if you're dealing with someone who has this attachment style, you might never know what their true feelings regarding you or a situation really are because they are suppressing those feelings, okay? So to know if either you or someone you're dealing with has this avoidant attachment style, you need to ask the question, do you keep people at a distance, right? Seeking others for possible physical reasons, but definitely not for emotional reasons. And, if there does start to become an emotional aspect where either you start to feel an emotional closeness or that person, you can sense that they're starting to feel that, do you start to avoid that person then? If you're dealing with somebody who might have this, you need to ask the question, are they keeping you at a distance, right? Does it seem like they might just be seeking you for possible physical reasons? And once there starts to be like an emotional aspect involved, then they start distancing themselves from you, or they start to avoid you. You know, if the answer to these questions is yes, then you or that person has this attachment style, right? But we're going to take a look at the numbers in your chart for more confirmation to see if you have this, because there are certain numbers in numerology that have similar energy to this attachment style. And if you have those numbers in key places, then that is definite confirmation, right? So, but before we do that, let's talk about the two other attachment styles really quickly first, because you might have one of these other ones instead of this, right? So the third attachment style is the anxious avoidant attachment style, also known as the fearful avoidant. And according to attachmentproject.com, okay, so you can head on over to that website if you want to get more information about this. But according to them, these people are kind of a combination of the avoidant and the anxious, right? So it's kind of both of them combined. So basically, these people are the most unstable when it comes to their behavior in relationships, because they show unstable and ambiguous behaviors in social bonds. So it can go either way, right? Where basically the partner or the relationship is often the source of desire and fear at the same time. Okay, so they desire to have a relationship and a bond with someone, but they also fear it at the same time. And these people want intimacy and they want closeness. Okay, so unlike the avoidant attachment style, right, where those people aren't even looking for that, right? They don't want intimacy, they don't want closeness, right? Usually just physical closeness. But with the anxious avoidant people, or the fearful avoidant, they want that, right? They want the intimacy and they want the closeness, kind of like similar to the anxious first style that we talked about. Okay, but the problem is that they have a lot of difficulty trusting and depending upon others. Okay, the main issue here is trust. And these people, they don't regulate their emotions very well. So, you know, they're not good at regulating what's going on inside of them when, you know, people start to behave a certain way, okay, according to attachmentproject.com. So basically what happens is these people, because they want intimacy and they want closeness and they're looking to be in a relationship with someone, they will seek out a partner or a relationship, okay? They're looking for it, so they'll seek it out. But they will avoid the person if there are signs that they perceive to be as abandonment, to avoid getting hurt. So similar to the anxious people, they really have a strong fear of abandonment, okay? So they'll look for somebody and everything is going fine, but as soon as that person starts to give any signs that they might abandon the fearful avoidant, right? If there's any signs basically that they perceive to be abandonment, okay? Because it doesn't have to actually be that that person is rejecting them or abandoning them, but in their mind, they perceive these to be signs. So what happens is they see these signs, oh my gosh, this person isn't that into me. I texted them 5 hours ago and they still haven't responded to me. Oh no. Oh my gosh, this person is leaving me. This person is rejecting me. They're abandoning me. So they start to think this and they start to have a lot of anxiety, right? A lot of anxiety starts to build up within them. And so what happens is as a remedy for that anxiety that they're starting to feel, they will start to avoid that person. Right? They will start to avoid the person that they think is abandoning them or rejecting them, basically as a way to avoid getting hurt. So they might be thinking, this person that I like is starting to show signs that they're going to abandon me, so I'm going to abandon them first to avoid getting hurt, right? So similar to the avoidant attachment style where they will just basically avoid the person, right? They will avoid them as a remedy, right, for the anxiety that they are feeling within them. And because like I had mentioned before, according to attachmentproject.com, they're not the best at regulating their emotions. They don't know how to deal with that anxiety that they're feeling within them. So to them, this is the best way to deal with it so that they're not having to feel this way anymore. But what happens a lot with this attachment style is that they often will regret dismissing that person, right? They often will regret being the one to leave first. So sometimes they might think to themselves, oh, maybe I did take things a little too personally. Maybe I jumped to conclusions. They took 5 hours to respond to me, but maybe they were busy, right? So they might start thinking this to themselves and start regretting what they did. And so what happens is they often will try to approach that person again, right? They'll come back later on and try to restart things, hoping that it's not too late and that person will give them another chance, or hoping that that person that they either rejected or avoided will either forgive them or take them back. And so this happens a lot where they'll just like resurface. And so, the behavior in relationships can be very ambiguous, right? It can be very unstable, where it's like very hot and cold with the anxious, fearful avoidance, right? And it's all because of the trust issues and the just, fear of being hurt, basically. So to know if you or somebody you are dealing with has this anxious, fearful, avoidant attachment style, you need to ask the question, is your romantic interest inconsistent due to a fear of being hurt? Or is that person you're dealing with, is their interest in you very inconsistent? Is it very hot and cold? Or are you the one that is very hot and cold with people? So if the answer to these questions is yes, then either you or the person you are dealing with has this anxious, fearful, avoidant attachment style. But now we're going to take a look at the numbers, because that will give more confirmation, right? Because the numbers, there are some numbers that resonate a lot more with this attachment style. And if you have these, or that person has these numbers in certain key places, then that's confirmation for you that they have this attachment style. So we're going to talk about the last one now, which is the secure attachment style. But if you already have figured out what your attachment style is and you don't want to watch the secure attachment style part, you can go ahead and skip to the rest of the video where I show you the numbers, okay? That's going to be very key. And so I'm going to put the timestamp for that right here. And I'm also going to put the timestamp below in the description box. And then after that, we're going to talk about some things you can do to overcome this if it does turn out that you have one of these. So the last attachment style is the secure attachment style. And according to attachmentproject.com, okay, so you can head on over to that website if you want to get more information about this. According to them, with the secure attachment style, these people are able to cultivate and maintain healthy relationships, right? No surprise, right? And these people are comfortable expressing their emotions openly. They are comfortable relying on their partners and letting their partners rely upon them. They don't avoid relationships, but they also don't fear being alone at the same time. Okay, so they're okay being in a relationship, but if they're alone and they're not in one at the time, they're okay with that too. Either way, they're comfortable in both situations. They don't run away with signs of perceived abandonment. Okay, so like, even, maybe somebody is more distant and not as responsive as they used to be, they don't take it as personally. They don't need to have their partner, approve of them or to respond to them in a given time manner. They're confident enough and, feel comfortable enough with themselves that they don't need that to still, to feel good. Right? They might be wondering why that person hasn't responded to them, but it's not going to destroy their mood and their whole entire day. And so because of this, they're not going to be feeling as much anxiety and fear if the other person is distant from them, okay? And whatever emotions they are having, they're going to know how to regulate it well. And they also seek out relationships and they are consistent in their interest. Okay, so they're not hot and cold with people, right? That's a big sign of being securely attached. And relationships are based on tolerance, good communication, honesty, and emotional closeness. So these are the attachment style numbers. And I do want to say that you don't have to have these numbers in your chart to have an attachment style. If you have the signs from any of the attachment styles that I just presented to you, then you have that attachment style, right? These numbers are just here to give you confirmation, and you are more likely to have one of these attachment styles if you have these numbers in certain key places, but you don't have to have them to have an attachment style. And likewise, if you have these numbers, that doesn't mean that you automatically have an attachment style either, okay? So just by having the numbers, that's not enough. You have to have the signs as well, okay, in addition to the numbers. And I'm going to show you exactly where to look for these numbers within your chart, but I just really quickly want to explain why these numbers are associated with certain attachment styles first. Number 2 can have the anxious attachment style because number 2 in numerology is a number of partnership. So being in a partnership and being with another person is very important for people with the 2 energy. And on the negative side of this number, they can be people pleasers and very dependent. 9 can have the anxious attachment style because 9 is the last number in numerology, so there's often a sense of always looking back on things that have happened to you in the past and wounds that have not been healed yet. So there can be a deep fear of abandonment that people with the 9 energy have. Master 11 can have the anxious attachment style because 11 is a variation of number 2. If you add the 2 ones together, you get a number 2. So it can have the qualities of the number 2, but in addition to this, more extreme anxiety because it is a master number. And of course, master number 22 can have the anxious attachment style because of the double 2s, right? It's got 2 2s in it, so it will have qualities of the number 2. And also the anxiety that comes with being a master number. But let's talk about the numbers in the avoidant attachment style. So 1, 5, and 7 can all have the avoidant attachment style because these are all numbers that need a lot of personal space and freedom, okay? 1 is a number of independence in numerology, 5 is a number of freedom, and 7 is a number of introspection and going within. And as you can see from the charts, so these numbers are going to be more avoidant than the other numbers because they're going to need more time to be by themselves so that they can cultivate independence, freedom, and introspection. Let's talk about the numbers in the anxious avoidant group now. 3 can have the anxious avoidant attachment style because to get number 3, you have to add 1 and 2 together. And so 3s often like to have independence, but they also like to have partnership too. So they can go back and forth between the 2 and sometimes demonstrate hot and cold behaviors. 7s can have the anxious avoidant attachment style because 7s need to have a lot of time alone because this is the number of introspection, but many of them will dream about being in relationships. So there can be a relationships from afar or a relationships at a distance type of quality to this number. 9 can have the anxious avoidant attachment style because relationships are important to the 9 energy, but there's also a deep fear of abandonment within them. And 11 can have the anxious avoidant attachment style because 11 has, like I said before, the qualities of the 2. If you add the 2 ones together, you get a 2, which is the need for partnership, but it also has the qualities of the number 1 as well, because we've got 2 1s within this number. And the 1 is all about having independence. And so there can be a very hot and cold type of energy with this number. 11s that resonate more with the 1 energy will be more like the anxious avoidant attachment style, and 11s that resonate more with the 2 energy will usually be more like the anxious attachment style. So now we're going to talk about where to look for these numbers in your chart, and then after that we're going to talk about what you can do specifically to help you to overcome these if you have one. So your life path number and your soul urge number are going to be key places to look for these numbers, okay? Your life path number is your main purpose in life. It's like the main lesson you are working on while you are on this planet. Your soul urge is your soul's calling in life. So if one of these numbers is either your life path or your soul urge, that can be an indication that you or someone has one of these attachment styles. Now, that's not the only placement to look for these as well. If one of these numbers from the list above appears 3 or more times within somebody's core chart, okay, so not as a life path or a soul urge, but somewhere else within the core chart, and you see it repeating 3 times, that can also be indication that someone has one of these attachment styles. Also, if the core chart contains mostly numbers from the attachment style group. So let's say the other 2 don't apply, but the person has all of the numbers from one of the groups in their chart, and it's just mostly those numbers. Then that could be an indication that they have this attachment style. And then last but not least, if a number from the above list appears as either a cycle or a pinnacle. So these are timing numbers. It's like a cycle of your life that you're going through, basically. And if somebody has one of these numbers as a cycle or a pinnacle, it could just be that they're experiencing that attachment style during this certain time in their life. Not necessarily that it will continue on with them after the cycle or pinnacle is over, but they might just be experiencing that attachment style at that one particular time of their life. And so, of course, it makes sense that the more of these things that I just listed off to you that you have checked off, or the more numbers you have from a particular group, the more chances you have of having that attachment style, right? So now let's talk about some things that you can do to help you to overcome these, because awareness is everything, first of all. Once you're aware that you have this, it helps to manage it, and a lot of people are able to overcome these just by having the awareness, right? So that's going to be key. And for the people with the anxious attachment style, when the person starts to distance themselves from you, that's when you need to start to find ways to regulate that anxiety that's happening within you, because that's the main issue, right? Is there's a lot of anxiety that's taking place within you. For you, the remedy is to contact that person, or to try a little bit harder to get them to approve of you. And so the key here is to find ways to remedy that anxiety within you without having to do that. And also, you want to build your self-esteem and work on your confidence too, because that's one of the key things here, is that there's often a lack of self-esteem. And so you feel like you have to work harder to get that person's approval because you're not feeling worthy about yourself to begin with, right? Building your self-confidence, building your self-esteem, so that when somebody starts to distance themselves from you, which they do in all relationships, it happens to everybody at some point, but when it starts to happen to you, you don't take it as a sign of rejection, right? And instead of reaching out or having to work harder, now you're sitting back and you're just letting things unfold and being confident that whatever happens, it's going to be okay, right? So when it comes to the avoidant attachment style, these people tend to be, well, let's just say that the anxious attachment style tends to be the most drawn to the avoidant attachment style. So these two usually are kind of like magnets together. You'll see them kind of like attracted to each other. So a lot of times anxious people will end up with people that have an avoidant attachment style. That's really, really common. When you're dealing with somebody who has an avoidant attachment style, it's good to know what you're dealing with. They have these signs, they have these numbers in their chart, they have it, and this is somebody that you might not want to consider being in a relationship with, or somebody that you might want to rethink about, okay? Because if you have this attachment style, then you can definitely work on changing your own behavior and yourself. But if you're dealing with somebody else, you can't change other people, right? People are who they are. So if you have either an anxious or an anxious avoidant attachment style, just know that these two groups tend to be attracted to the avoidant people. So, and that's just gonna put fuel on the fire, okay? So best to just stay away from these people. And so for the anxious avoidant attachment style people, the best advice that a lot of websites give out to you guys is communication, right? There's often a lack of communication when you are with somebody and you perceive that they are distancing themselves from you, right? Maybe they actually are distancing themselves from you. But like I said, you often will perceive this as some sort of rejection, right? That they're not interested in you anymore, or so-and-so. The best thing to do when that happens is to communicate with that person, right? Reach out to them and see exactly what's going on. Or when they come back finally, you can ask them, you can just ask them straight up and find out what's going on. So, because often there can be a lack of communication with you guys, and so you just will assume that, they're rejecting you or whatever, but that's usually not the case, right? Usually it's, like I said, it's because they're busy, or because, maybe things are going on in their life, or it has something to do with them, or, you never know what it is. So when those situations happen, when you feel like, okay, I need to reject this person first before they reject me and I get hurt, next time that starts to happen to you, then best thing to do is to just communicate with that person. Reach out to them and get direct communication. It's better to do that than to end it and then you end up regretting it, right? You end up regretting it and then coming back later on and hoping that they will take you back, right? So that way you can figure out what's going on and there's no regret on your part. And like I said, a lot of times you'll be surprised that these perceived signs of rejection are actually just all in your head. And, I would recommend the same thing for you that I recommended to the anxious group. Work on ways to build your self-esteem and just build your self-confidence, because sometimes there can be a lack of that and a negative view of yourself, right? And work on ways to regulate your emotions. Work on ways to regulate that anxiety that you start feeling within you when you start to see these perceived signs of rejection, right? What are some ways that you can regulate those feelings and that anxiety and do something else that's more productive rather than just, avoiding that person or rejecting them, right? And I do offer love readings on my website, so if you want to find out what's going on with another person and when they might come back, based on the numbers in their chart, or when you'll find love, when you'll get married, that kind of thing, you can head on over to my website, starsalignwithcarmen.com. I hope that this information was helpful to you, and let us know in the comments below if it turned out that you have one of these attachment styles, and what have you learned today, and what are you going to do going forward in the future? Let us know in the comments below. And if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and share it with other people. Really helps to get this information out there when you do that, and these videos are a monster for me to put together. And I would love to have you subscribe and to become part of the family. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks for watching. I love you guys, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care.